the MiG-21 is now in its last days in the Indian Air Force. We have with us Air Chief Marshal RKS Bhadauria. He has been pivotal in designing the future of the Indian Air Force in more ways than one. He has flown 43 aircraft and has 4,300 flying hours, flying different types of airplanes, helicopters, fighters, transports. He has more of a perspective about the MiG-21 in the Indian Air Force than perhaps anybody else. Sir, welcome to Bharat Shakti. Sir, so you've flown, as I said, about 43 airplanes. Where does the MiG-21 set in the Air Force's overall, things from the early 60s, then in its heydays in the 80s and 90s to now? How do you describe the journey of the MiG-21 in the Indian Air Force?
MiG-21 has been our backbone, so to say, for a major portion of my career or what I've seen of the Air Force.
So to be quite honest, at 93, the MiG-20, 93 years of the Indian Air Force, the MiG-21s basically earned its retirement after 62 years.
Absolutely. And so, 62 is when it, 63 was
63
when it got inducted,
right?
Just before the 65 war, and it's nearly 62 years. So,
62 years.
So that is one. And more importantly, when it got inducted, it was cutting edge. Hugely capable interceptor. Initially came as an interceptor role when it came in 63, and thereafter graduated onto a better interceptor. Apart from 2 missiles, it got a centerline cannon. Thereafter went on to 4 stations, 2 drop tank, 2 missiles, and thereafter went on to air to ground role. So it was essentially initially Type 77 was the mainstay. Thereafter Type 96, and of course BIS followed Type 96. And the last was a very deep modernization or upgrade, which was the Bison. This was late 90s. So firstly, when it came, it was absolutely top class, cutting edge, absolutely. Did wonderfully well in 71 primarily, and in all subsequent requirements operationally. Was the absolute core of Air Force capability for a long time, many decades. It's later when Mirages got established and Jaguars followed by MiG-29 that capability enhancement took place. But for a long time, MiG-21 was the mainstay. And equally important, I think, is the fact we shouldn't forget that MiG-21s at one time were started doing even the training role of fighter pilots after the initial training, after the jet, basic training. So the flying capabilities of the pilot were honed on the MiG-21s, and that was from that perspective a very solid contribution to the Indian Air Force capability right across. Even till now, most of the pilots have graduated on MiG-21s.
So basically, as you just touched upon the training aspect of it, first 3 years of your flying experience were basically on the MiG-21, and you were taught how to fly earlier, but you learned to fight on the MiG-21.
Yeah.
So could you tell us about how the MiG-21 enriched your experience, your flying experience, and how it added value to your later flying career?
Yeah, my career started with, after the initial, I flew my jet training on ISCRAs, and that is a stage when Air Force experimented with sending pilots directly for training instead of hunters directly to MiGs, and 8 of us from our course went to Tezpur.
So you're the first batch?
The first batch on this experiment, and thereafter, this became a standard practice. And we trained on the MiG-21s in the first 6 months at Tezpur, and then got posted to 23 Squadron. So I came with 6 months of training on the MiG-21s, and thereafter the first operational squadron, which was 23 Squadron. And of course, 23 Squadron tenure for me personally, operationally, and in terms of what it gave me as combat capability training, operational orientation, it was phenomenal. Firstly, the aircraft itself, that was Type 75. That was the latest in the MiG-21 series that time. It had a very capable missile R-60. Thereafter, we had graduated to R-73. Overall, the Type 75 that time, if I have to go back, 75 came with a very good engine, R-25, and capability of, there was a combat rating where you could increase its thrust further in combat situations. So it gave you a good ability to counter even F-16s. It was closest to what F-16 performance. You know, we got very close to 1:1 kind of thrust to weight ratio in the air with that combat rating. So overall, from combat training point of view, and the kind of training that's required to really excel in combat, this platform was excellent. We had some wonderful, seniors who really took us through the paces. And in my career, I think that was the foundation of flying laid, not only from combat perspective, for all kind of flyings, because it had a air-to-ground role. We did everything, including night. There are going on to night strike. And it's after 3 years plus, little over 3 years, that I got posted to Jaguars, and subsequently my career. So for me personally, and it is so for most of the fighter pilots of the Air Force of my generation and my generation ahead, and even generations behind. We were, we flew a large part of our initial training on MiG-21s. So it has laid the foundation of practically 75% of the Air Force till about 2 decades back, till about a decade back.
So how is the aircraft when it comes to handling?
No, it is it's not a simple aircraft to fly. It's a very high speed platform, very high speed on high speed, and for combats at those speeds is absolutely phenomenal. At low speeds, it's difficult to handle. It has its because it's basically a design is for meant for high speed. But when you get into combat, you very rapidly move towards the low speed envelopes, and that's where aerodynamically it is a little more vulnerable. This because of the design itself, and that is where some of the initial accidents did happen, and then thereafter we got the better of it by in terms of more training, in terms of more orientation. So it's a difficult aircraft to fly. The takeoff and landing speeds are higher. At the same time, challenge being higher, it really enables you to become a better pilot. It's as simple as that.
So many MiG-21 pilots do remember their first landing.
Every MiG-21 pilot would remember it.
So could you tell us about
it's a speed. Initially, when you fly the MiG-21 after your basic training, you're always behind the aircraft. So you really have to catch up with the aircraft, and therefore that is part of the training.
So could you tell us about your first landing?
First landing it's too far back. I don't really remember much, but the way you are trained, it is every first time that you do a solo, it is always an experience, and the moment you complete it, the sense of exhilaration and satisfaction is huge. So, and this was in Tezpur. I'm talking about the first time I went solo. That was in Tezpur. So it was soon after our basic training. So for us, it was even more. I won't say challenging. Challenging is for everybody at every stage, but even more rewarding, so to say, more satisfying.
So this was, I'm assuming, a Type 69.
This was Type 77 in Tezpur. The Type 77 was still flying.
Right.
So we did our training there.
All right.
Oh.
So when it comes to technology upgradations, the Air Force has basically from the very early days been upgrading the airplane, right? But then there were many other airplanes which also came alongside. Say the Sukhoi 7 came a little later. But then no other airplane has seen the sort of service that the MiG-21 has seen. So my point is that why is it that, how rather did the Air Force choose to, in a way, post-65, where the aircraft did not have much of an operational role. There were, I think, 5 or 6 airplanes back then. And why was it that the Air Force really chose to fly the MiG-21 and didn't just basically bet on the MiG-21 technically?
Yeah. In 65, actually, we started with 9 aircraft in the first in 28 squadrons.
But then I think there was a major collision.
Yeah. So in the ops time, in 65, it was just, the beginning stages, and they did provide cover for some of the strike forces. So even 65 ops they took part. And in fact, they would have got a saber if they had a gun.
For the lack of a gun, as
Yeah,
they say.
for the lack of a gun, you must be knowing that. And of course, 71 later on, we can come to that and discuss those aspects.
We had the first supersonic air-to-air kill in 71.
Yeah. But the perspective you're asking in terms of why it became so important for the Air Force, I think the starting point was when this aircraft was inducted and the way induction was planned. It was initially, imported, and thereafter the license production was planned, and that was set up with HAL at various HAL units. And I think that was the starting point of increasing the number of aircraft. So started with Type 77 as the mainstay. Initially was 74, 76 also, but quickly shifting to Type 77 as license production. I think that was one of the reasons. Secondly, and more importantly, the aircraft capability itself. Air Force was happy with it. It was cutting edge at its time, advanced in terms of its combat capability, very capable if you were to consider the environment and our adversaries at that time, and therefore the numbers were increased. So I would say starting point was a mix of its capability and the fact that we were started to produce. That was the fighter first we started to produce. So later on, once we started modifying it for air-to-ground role, it virtually became multi-role, and then Type 75 bis when it came, it was even more capable, both combat-wise and air-to-ground-wise. That itself added to its advantage of having more in numbers. So I think those are the reasons why Air Force had so many of these. Starting point being that we started to produce it, and it was capable, and we were able to modify and keep it current. To take for a long time.
Current, I mean, when the Bison came initially, it had BVR capability, and literally no other aircraft, no fighter aircraft in the Pakistani Air Force had BVR capability
Absolutely.
at that point of time.
When Bison was done, again, I don't think anybody in the world modified the MiG-21 as much as we did.
Right.
We always took out the maximum from any platform, Indian Air Force historically, but MiG-21 in particular, for the kind of mods we did, and Bison mod was really, top class mod for that time. We went in for the latest of the missiles.
To be very honest, the Bison had a helmet-mounted display.
It had the first helmet-mounted display.
The F-22 still does not have a helmet-mounted display.
So we had a helmet-mounted display. We had the latest avionics in terms of inertial navs had started. Mirage 3 and Mirage 5 already had. So there was a lot of inertial navigation capability that had started. Our Jaguars had, but Mirage Bison had a advanced inertial nav system, a complete nav attack system. Overall, I had already spoken about BVR and the first BVR, a good radar and a helmet-mounted display. So radar being at that time, that Doppler radar was very capable. Again, absolutely competitive in its contemporary environment. So Bison was a tremendous upgrade, and thereafter we were able to stretch both in terms of capability and generation, so to say. We were not behind if we were to compare with adversary. So that's the way we have really drawn the best out of MiG-21. Nobody in the world has done as much on a MiG-21 as we have done.
Right. From completely analog to almost completely digital.
Yeah, and then digital, absolutely. Yeah.
So, if you look back at the MiG-21 now, unfortunately, I have to say, we look back at the MiG-21 service record. What sort of a legacy do you think it will leave behind? I mean, it's got, in 1971, we got, like I said, that, we got the first supersonic air-to-air kill. We got one F-16. In fact, the F-16 was designed keeping the MiG-21 in mind. So, plus then also the training aspect. What sort of a legacy do you think overall the MiG-21 would leave behind?
I think the legacy is a tremendous legacy that the aircraft is leaving behind, and in any of the departments that you see. If you were to look at how the aircraft performed for the Indian Air Force operationally, 65 we talked about, 71 in East on the Eastern Front. It was because of MiG-21s that we rapidly moved towards air superiority in no time, and the air-to-ground bombing that was done. at the Eastern Pakistan airfields.
Karmitola.
Yeah. And of course, the strike on the Governor House, that was the absolute, icing on the cake. The kind of action taken and in absolute minimum reaction time. There was hardly any reaction time. There were no details available. The target changed when the pilot was sitting in the aircraft. When the CEO was about to start up, is when the change of target given in terms of location.
In terms of
that the meeting is at Governor House.
They were given a tourist map of the city.
Yeah, and he had a tourist map as this thing, because there was no time to even prepare. And that is the beauty of the Indian Air Force and the capability of MiG-21. That firstly you are able to react at timings which are unimaginable to operational situation, and the aircraft it was utilized in a role to strike when a meeting is taking place, strike so accurately and put those rockets right into the Governor House by all the 4 aircraft. So it was a tremendous achievement. On the Western Front too, the aircraft performed well. You mentioned starfighters. They had killed some starfighters, Sabre, 1F6. Later on, of course, Atlantic after Kargil, and F-16s after Balakot. So overall, operationally, the aircraft proved its mettle. As a platform and as a combat aircraft, the kind of roads it did, I think again, it's a strong legacy it leaves behind. All kind of roles. We talked about air combat, we talked about air to ground. It did a photo recce role. It did a electronic warfare role. 35 Squadron. It was modified even for escort jamming. So across the board, all roles. And don't forget the role in training.
Great.
After Hunters, when the Hawks got delayed, apart from Hunters, the MiG-21 started getting utilized. And when Hunters phased out, only MiG-21s were utilized for advanced jet training and putting all the pilots into the operations squadron thereafter. So huge role there. Again, huge contribution. In terms of number of pilots who have flown, you just see the number of aircraft. 800. I think 874, if my numbers are correct, is the total number that got inducted into the Air Force. 479 of these aircraft were produced in India. So see the scale. If you have to talk of pilots, as per my information, 3,000 of our pilots have flown MiG-21. 3,000. If you talk about total flying for the Indian Air Force, 15 lakh hours, 1.5 million hours. Okay. If you were to just convert the hours into years, it's 25 years. Wow. Just imagine the scale of what we are talking. Okay, at one time, if you take our Air Force, how many units have flown? My figure is 21, but there's some figure of 23 squadrons total. But 21 squadrons, apart from the TACD flew MiG-21s, the training squadron MOFT, Alpha and Bravo flew MiG-21s.
OCU.
And OCU flew. So 21 squadrons plus 4 more units flew the MiG-21.
At 1.9?
No, this was not at single point. At single point, 19 squadrons were flying at one given time. And that's virtually half the Air Force.
That is true.
So it is a tremendous legacy. I mean, this is a watershed event, I would say, as far as Air Force is concerned. Tremendous contribution towards Air Force capability, enhancement of, skills of the Air Force fighter pilots. And I think Air Force will always remember this great machine.
So now we've quantified the service of the MiG-21. We've tried to quantify the service of the MiG-21.
Unparalleled.
But then now we're looking forward to, say, the Tejas. Mm-hmm. So the big shoes to fill for that tiny little jet of ours.
Yeah, big shoes. And just remember, now technologies have moved. The kind of aircraft that need to come in, if you were to compare aircraft, of course, they will be much more advanced, much more capable. They are fly-by-wire, hugely composites and computerized. But in terms of, we have to see every aircraft in its time.
Right.
Okay, and if you compare from that perspective, yes, these aircraft that are coming in now will have to contribute tremendously to be able to get anywhere close to what MiG-21s have done for the Air Force.
So how do you see the Tejas filling in for...
Tejas is very capable as a replacement for MiG-21, hugely capable. There is Mark 1A that is coming. But again, like I said, times are changing fast. The kind of weapons required are changing fast. So our future plans, to my mind, are more important. That is, Tejas Mark II becomes hugely important because it can carry a better weapon load, better longer air-to-ground weapon capability, similarly air-to-air missile capability, and therefore it becomes more capable and more desirable than Mark 1A. And AMCA, of course, is the stealth development that needs to be speeded up. So it is the future projects which will really be required to be pushed to replace our numbers of squadron that are falling. So if from that perspective, I think I would put it that way.
So would it be fair enough to say that it was probably the MiG-21 that gave the HAL the confidence to basically build the Tejas and other airplanes? Because
in a large sense, yes. But let me also in the same perspective bring in that HAL had designed and produced HF-24. Don't forget that.
Right.
And that was equally capable in terms of plan, form and design. In fact, the work done on Marut was much more than work done on MiG-21. MiG-21 was a licensed production. Marut was designed and developed and produced in India by HAL. So I would put from HAL perspective and design terms, Marut as a product that HAL should remember. But in overall production capability, manufacturing prowess, setting up supply chains and contribution to the Air Force, MiG-21 license production, I think, has been hugely successful.
So that's basically our little chat on the MiG-21.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir, for giving us a very wonderful perspective on the aircraft. Thank you.